Well, Hawkesmoor, the novel, is the first of three that will eventually comprise the Hawkesmoor trilogy. Hawkesmoor is about Robin Dashwood. Robin Dashwood is a history professor at NYU and also a 250-year-old vampire. He goes to an exhibit in New York and he sees at that exhibit something that indicates there's been a murder back in his human time at his castle. So he decides that he must return to Yorkshire and to Hawkesmoor Castle to solve this mystery because it concerns someone he loved very much. And that is the start of the Hawkesmoor trilogy. One of the really fun things about writing Hawkesmoor was developing these two worlds, the sunny-natured human world and a kind of vampire subworld. And the vampires exist all over the world in my universe. And they are lawyers, doctors, some of them are artists, some of them are, swimming instructors. But they all live these lives because they don't have to hide at night only. They're allowed to be out during the day. So they all have these lives where they're vampires and coexisting. And it was fun to develop that whole subculture of different vampires from different parts of the world and little clans and groups and tribes and things, and bring it all together. The moors are a wild, beautiful, desolate place, and it has a big place in the English imagination, the romantic imagination, not in the sense of bodice rippers, but in the sense of kind of high adventure and suspense. Conan Doyle set The Hound of the Baskervilles in the moors. There's Wuthering Heights, there's Jane Eyre. So I grew up in that milieu. My parents read me stories when I was a little girl, the famous five. They always solved their adventures on the moors. So when I came to write a book, I really wanted to write one set in the moors because that's how I grew up, hearing about it and all these sort of suspenseful things. So that's what led me to it, and it's a great place for a novel because there's mist and desolation and lots for the imagination to work with. Well, Britain is a country absolutely steeped in folklore. It's everywhere. You can think of Robin Hood in Nottingham. You can think of King Arthur and his knights. You can think of the two dragons, Saxon and the Red Dragon of Wales. And I chose to focus on Welsh folklore, and in particular the Tylwyth Teg, who are the interdimensional gatekeepers of Wales. They kind of guard the gateway against evil interlopers. And they form a sort of pool of fabulous stories that the Welsh love to tell. And my great-grandfather used to say he knew where the Tylwyth Teg sang, and he would go and listen to them on twilight evenings. And so that's all part of my experience as a young person, and it all comes into my book. It's interesting because I don't do a lot of research. I mean, I do some. For example, I wanted to know how long it took for a carriage to get from Yorkshire to London, so I kind of looked that up, and that was, I think, about 5 days, I found out. But I grew up in a family that was immersed in history, and I just grew up hearing about the 18th century. We would talk about history around the dinner table. I'd be out with my mum doing a bit of shopping, and she'd say, "Oh, that's very interesting. You know, they used to do up the dresses of that time with laces," and she would show me how and things like that. So I actually have a lot of that running around in my head anyway. So I didn't need to do tons of research because I love the era, and it kind of just sort of flows out of me, I suppose. You know, it's funny. What I really liked best about the book, as it turned out by the time I finished writing it, was the relationship between Robin Dashwood and Caroline du Barry, the human girl he falls in love with. She's such a fun character. She's not whiny or wimpy or, dissolves into puddles of tears. She's a horsewoman, she fox hunts, and she's done 3-day eventing. And she's just a good sport, and she's got a great sense of humor, and they work really well together. And I just thought it was a terrific part of the book.